Imagine waking up every morning knowing that your job could kill you before the sun sets. Not because of war, not because of sickness, but simply because of what you did for work. In medieval society, some of the most dangerous roles were not on the battlefield at all. They were the everyday jobs that kept towns running. Jobs that seem normal today, but in the Middle Ages, were deadly. What you are about to hear will change the way you imagine medieval life forever. When people think of the Middle Ages, they imagine knights in shining armor, kings ruling from tall castles, and great battles fought on open fields. But that is only one side of history. Behind the walls of every medieval castle, every town, and every farm were people doing ordinary work under extraordinary danger. They were cleaners, miners, messengers, and tradesmen. They were the unseen engine of medieval society. But unlike today, there were no safety rules, no protective equipment, no medical support. If something went wrong, that was it. Lives could end in seconds. And even though these workers faced terrible risks, their jobs were essential. Without them, cities would collapse into chaos. Trade would stop, disease would spread, armies would weaken. Entire kingdoms depended on these people. Today we uncover their stories. We explore the most perilous jobs of the medieval world and understand why they were so dangerous. Each job reveals a hidden truth about survival in a time when life was uncertain and danger was everywhere. Our journey begins in the darkest place of all. Deep beneath castles and city streets were huge pits where waste collected for months. The gong farmer was the person hired to climb into these pits and clean them. They worked at night, so fewer people would see them. They carried simple tools and a small lamp that barely lit their way. The danger was immediate. The air inside the pit was full of toxic gases. A single deep breath could make a worker collapse. Once someone fainted down there, rescue was almost impossible. Many men never climbed back out. Gong farmers were paid well, but the price was their health and their reputation. People avoided them because of the smell that clung to their skin. Yet without them, cities would become filthy and disease would spread fast. They were invisible heroes of sanitation in a world without plumbing. Next, we enter the mines. Mining in the Middle Ages was one of the most physically demanding and deadly jobs. Workers dug deep underground with very limited tools. Their tunnels were tight and dark. They used candles for light, which also meant fire risk and air filled with gases. The deeper they dug, the hotter and more unstable the tunnels became. Wooden beams held the ceilings up, but one strong strike of the hammer could loosen a rock above. Entire tunnels sometimes collapsed without warning. There were also dangerous underground pockets of foul air. Miners had no way to detect these pockets. They only realized something was wrong when a worker collapsed. If the air turned bad, the whole team was at risk. Many miners worked until their lungs gave out. Others never returned home at all, but their work fueled the economy. They supplied iron for weapons, silver for coins, and coal for heat. Without miners, kingdoms could not survive. Now we step into the tanner's workshop. Tanners turned animal skins into leather, which was needed for clothing, shoes, armor, tools, and furniture. But the process was extremely brutal. Tanners soaked skins in strong mixtures that included lime and other chemicals that burned their skin and lungs. The smell of the workshop was terrible, so terrible that tanneries were usually built far away from towns. People did not want to live anywhere near them. The chemicals tanners worked with caused infections and long-term breathing problems. Their hands and feet were constantly exposed to bacteria. Tanners were treated almost like untouchables. Society depended on them, but did not respect them. Yet without them, soldiers had no armor and workers had no shoes. They lived on the edge of the community, risking their health every day. We now follow the medieval messenger. Messengers were the lifeline of communication. They carried letters, orders, peace treaties, and warnings. They rode alone through forests, mountains, and open fields. Every journey was dangerous. Bandits hid along the roads. Some messengers vanished and were never found. Wild animals, storms, and rivers made travel deadly. Messengers often rode for days without rest. They had no protection and carried only a small weapon. Yet their job was vital. Without them, kings could not command their armies or maintain control of their territories. Imagine riding through a dark forest at night with only the moon for light, knowing danger lurked behind every tree. That was the life of a medieval messenger. Finally, we meet the night watchman. This job was one of silent responsibility. While towns slept, the watchmen guarded the walls, stood by the gates, and walked along the dark streets. They carried a torch or lantern, which made them visible to enemies but made it hard for them to see far ahead. If a fire started, the watchman had to respond first. If thieves entered the town, the watchman had to confront them. If a surprise attack happened, the watchman was the first one struck. They worked in darkness with limited tools, limited support, and constant fear. Yet without them, towns would fall into chaos. They were the unseen shields of the community. So what does all of this tell us about medieval life? It tells us that the Middle Ages were not just shaped by kings, knights, and battles. They were shaped by the quiet, dangerous work of ordinary people whose names history rarely remembers. People who cleaned waste, mined deep underground, processed leather, carried messages, and stood guard in the darkest hours. These workers lived tough and risky lives, but without them medieval society would not function. They kept towns clean, armies supplied, news delivered, and communities safe. Their jobs were hard, unprotected, and often deadly. But they pushed forward because survival depended on them. Next time you imagine medieval life, look beyond the armor and castles. Remember the workers who faced danger every single day, not for glory, but for survival. They are the hidden heroes of history.